Ashley, and I'm a registered nurse, and I work on a labor and delivery unit. I graduated in 2019 with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Oklahoma. Getting a Bachelor of Science in Nursing is not the only way to become a registered nurse. You can also go to a 2-year college and get an associate's degree in nursing. Both routes provide the opportunity to sit for the NCLEX, which is the licensing exam to becoming a registered nurse. The biggest differences are with the bachelor's degree, you're able to obtain roles like a manager, supervisor, things like that within a hospital. Most hospitals do require a bachelor's degree to have those positions. Not all. So, even the associate's degree at some hospitals will allow you to take on those roles. But when it comes down to just being a bedside nurse, an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree, there's just not much difference in the care that you can provide your patients. Again, other roles that you can take on with a bachelor's degree is something called case management. And the list can go on and on. I think that's something that's really cool about nursing is that, even with just a bachelor's degree, and there are higher levels of, degrees that you can obtain just within nursing, but with a bachelor's degree and an associate's degree, there are just so many different roles that you can take on in a hospital, and you don't just have to be that bedside nurse. And I think that's really cool. Something that really attracted me towards nursing is that, you don't just have to be stuck in one role for the rest of your life. It does allow some flexibility. Again, kind of touching a little more on the higher, the other degrees that you can get within nursing. So you can get a master's degree in nursing, you can get a doctorate in nursing, get a PhD in nursing. And again, there's even different roles within each of those degree pathways that you can take on. With a master's degree, you can, each university is going to offer something a little bit different as far as specific areas that you want to get your master's in. But one that I find really interesting and that I've even considered is a master's degree in nursing education. And so that would allow you to go in and work as a professor in a nursing program, which I think is really cool. I've always enjoyed teaching as well, and that was another career that I had even considered. And so I think given the opportunity to maybe provide both areas that I'm passionate about, teaching and nursing together, is amazing. And so a lot of universities do offer that program, so a master's degree in nursing education. But again, there are other areas that you can get a master's degree in. With a doctorate, most states now, you need a doctorate in nursing to become a nurse practitioner. You may be familiar with that. So again, that's just a higher level of nursing. It does allow you to practice a little more independently when you're a nurse practitioner. And then a PhD in nursing is going to allow you the opportunity to do a lot of research. So to go back a little bit, I talked about how a nurse practitioner can allow you to work a little more independently. But I do think that's something really cool just about being a registered nurse too, is you are given a lot of independence in your role. So we often think we count on the doctors to make decisions, and while that is so true, and they're obviously a huge role in a patient's care, I think it's awesome that the nurse is kind of on the forefront of everything. So you're the one that's going to be in there with that patient and seeing their signs and symptoms and the things that they're telling you, and it's your job as a registered nurse to let the doctor know these things and kind of let them know your concerns based on what you're seeing or based on what the patient's telling you. And I think that in itself is a ton of independence. Because it's all on you to recognize those things and know hey, that's not right. Let me call the doctor. Let me discuss this with them so that we can, maybe come up with a new plan of care for this patient. And then going forward to what I talked about with the PhD and doing research. So nursing is always changing. The nursing that we know today is not the nursing that we knew 20 years ago. It's not the nursing that we knew 10 years ago. And hey, it's not even the nursing that we knew a year ago. Nursing is evolving daily. We're constantly coming up with better ways to care for our patients. And I think that's amazing. And I think that's something that really stood out to me about nursing is that, we're not here to be stuck in our old ways. We're always trying to figure out, how can I best care for this patient? How can we bring the best possible outcomes for these patients? So if you're really interested in research, even just, as a registered nurse, you're kind of, you're in the mix of the research. So these, nurses that maybe have their PhD or in different positions besides bedside nursing, they're counting on you to, tell them when maybe something isn't working, like within a hospital, like within like your unit, telling them like, hey, like this doesn't really work for my patients, and like this is kind of why I think it's not working. Like that's kind of what sparks more research to be done. And so by you being present and vocalizing those things that you don't think work as well, that's what helps nursing continue to grow and better itself. And so I think that's, even if you're like, well, I don't ever want to get a PhD, I don't ever want to like actually do like, all the research, that you still are interested in it, like even as an RN, like you're a part of research, because that's where it all starts, at the bedside. Everything starts at the bedside. And so again, and that's just like another huge part of your role as a registered nurse. And I think it's so cool that you're constantly getting to, influence the way our patient, if we're getting to influence the way our patients are cared for. And I think that's amazing. And so just thinking about that and just the different ways that you can be a nurse. And so don't think that, oh, I just have to be at the bedside, or, that's the one and only way to be a nurse, because it's not. There's so many different pathways. And I think that's what attracts so many people to nursing, is that like, well, if I get tired of doing this, then I can go try this, but I can still be a nurse. Because I know for most people, whenever they choose to be a nurse, it's because they think, well, I want to care for people, like I want to help people. And so you don't ever, like, I think if you have that mindset going in, like, you never really lose that. Like, I think you always still want to help and care for people, but just know that there are different ways to do that. It doesn't just have to be at the bedside. So I would say if you are considering nursing, I would call like a local hospital in your area and just see if they have like shadowing opportunities. So whenever you're shadowing a nurse, you're not going to be doing any of the hands-on stuff. You're that nurse's shadow for the day. So you're going to be observing them and seeing like, okay, what does it really mean to be a nurse? And I think that's good advice for any area that you plan to go into, because so many times people, they choose a job and they have, they really don't have any experience. They don't know anyone that's ever done that. They've never actually like seen people work in that role, and they get there and like, well, maybe this wasn't for me. And so I think it's great if you have the chance to shadow a nurse and just make sure like, okay, yeah, I can definitely see myself doing this. But just keep in mind that, let's say you shadow a nurse in an ICU, like an intensive care setting. That's going to be very different from what like I see and I do as a labor and delivery nurse. So if you shadow someone like in an ICU and they're like, well, that wasn't really for me, well, that's okay. Like maybe you're like, well, but maybe nursing still is. Maybe you see if you can shadow someone in a different area too. And that's the really cool thing about nursing school in itself, is that, you're given the chance to rotate through these different areas and kind of figure out, okay, what am I passionate about? What am I not? But again, my biggest recommendation going into any job is to just shadow someone. I think that is really important and can really make a difference in your longevity, or like how long you stay in a profession. So that's something that I would highly recommend doing. They also offer nurse externships. So like, let's say you've shadowed and you're like, yes, nursing is what I want to do. And you've been in nursing school, and in between like your first and second year of nursing school, they will allow you to do something called a nurse externship, or it's very similar to what you hear like an internship. And so this allows you a little more like hands-on experience, and again, just kind of figuring out like what area of nursing am I really interested in. I did an externship at a hospital, and I did it on labor and delivery, and that's kind of what solidified my decision, like, yes, I want to be a labor and delivery nurse. I really like this area. I ended up working at that hospital now too, and so it just allowed me more experience in that setting that I was going to, work in the future too, which I think is great. So I would recommend taking every opportunity you can just to gain, whatever experience it may be, whether that's, just shadowing, because it provides so much insight to the profession itself, and then just taking up opportunities to, do an externship. And whenever you do clinical rotations in nursing school, that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, about seeing the different areas of nursing. Just be really involved and pay attention to your nurses and ask those questions, because that's what's going to make you a better nurse. And again, that applies to any profession. I mentioned earlier, like, I feel like a big perk of nursing is just the many different pathways that you can go down with a nursing degree. But I think another big thing, especially for me right now, being an RN, is the schedule itself. So I think that's something that you'll definitely start to think about more as you get further, in your education, and like as you get closer to being an adult. You'll start to think about your schedule and how your work schedule really fit into your life, because it matters. And so for me, I work night shift, and I was really nervous to do it, but I actually really love it. So nurses typically work 3 shifts a week, and they're 12-hour shifts. And so it's really nice to have 4 other days throughout the week that I can be off. I really enjoy that because it just allows me more time to get, other things done, or just, do other things that I want to be doing. And so I work, like I said, I work on night shift, so I work from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. And then if you work day shift, you're going to work 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Night shift is the reason I have these dark circles under my eyes, but I actually really like it because I think I've been up since 2 p.m. and I work tonight, but so it's still like I have time to like get things done before I go to work. And it's not that hard to stay up at night. I know it sounds like it may be, but it's really not. And so I feel like working night shift, I've been able to actually be a little more productive in my life, even whenever I do have to work that night. So I think the schedule in itself is something really cool. And obviously most jobs, you're going to work more than 3 days a week. Sometimes these days that you work are weekends. Sometimes they are holidays. You probably know a hospital never closes, and so nurses are always needed. So I think that's a big thing for people to always consider when choosing nursing, is that like you may have to miss Christmas, or you may have to miss Thanksgiving once a year. Hospitals are really good about taking turns with nurses. That way you haven't missed Christmas for 5 years in a row. But just keep that in mind, that hospitals never close, nurses are always needed. But overall, the schedule is, I think, amazing. I think it's really awesome to have those 4 days off and just work those 3. Those 3 shifts are long, 12 hours. That's a long day, but it's totally worth it to get that extra time off and be able to rest. And but I think the schedule is a huge perk to being a nurse.
Hello, my name is Sam Baining. I work for TD Williamson as a new product development engineer, and I'm going to talk to you today about one of the products that I work on, which is called the Pipeline Pig. And I know what you're thinking. It's not a pig that you would see at a farm. It's a special product that's been used in pipelines for decades now. And I'm going to explain to you what it is, what it's made of, and what it does. Now first, before we get too far into this, I have a disclaimer that I'm working out of my house today, so I'm going to try to make this explanation using only items that I can find around the house. So you'll have to use a little bit of imagination, but I think that this will all work out just fine. Okay, so first let me explain to you what a pipeline pig looks like. They can come in a lot of sizes and shapes. Some shapes are really simple and some get kind of complicated. I don't have a real pipeline pig with me here, so I'm using household supplies. So they can be as small as this earplug and similar in shape, kind of like a dart. That's pretty small. They can also be spherical, like this ball, and they can be this big, and they can even be quite a bit bigger than this, which is pretty big. Now let's talk about what pipeline pigs are made of. So they're made of a material called polyurethane. And you will actually see polyurethane used in a lot of places that are probably familiar to you. So some common uses are the insoles for your shoe, seat cushions in cars or movie theaters, and even like floor mats. You can see them in roller skate wheels, scooter wheels, really a lot of places. And it can change from being really flexible to really hard. If you imagine a roller skate wheel, that's going to be really hard. But if you imagine like this sole for a shoe, it's really flexible. What we use is a more flexible urethane because when we want to put it inside of a pipeline, it needs to bend in order to seal and fit inside that pipeline profile. But aside from polyurethane's ability to have a lot of different hardnesses, whether it's really hard or really flexible, something that a lot of polyurethanes have in common is that they're all really strong, and that strength is what we're looking for in our pipeline pigs, because we don't want them to fall apart when they're cleaning a pipeline. Now let's talk about why we want to even clean a pipeline. There are a couple of really big reasons you want to clean a pipeline. The first reason is because of efficiency. So imagine if you were driving on your way to school down a 3-lane road, and normally you can leave your house, drive to school, get there on time, and there's no problem. But today there was a wreck on the road and one of the lanes has been closed. All of a sudden there's a traffic buildup. It'll take you maybe 5 or 10 more minutes to get to school. And you went from being on time to get to school to not being on time anymore, or maybe you were able to make it on time and some of your classmates weren't because of that lane closure. So the best way to deal with that lane closure, and the way that we currently take care of it, is by sending in a truck that will physically remove the car that was in the wreck, therefore reopening the lane and opening the full flow of traffic, and now everyone can get to school no problem. Well, the same general principle applies in a pipeline. You have a lot of debris build up in a pipeline over time, and debris can range from anything, whether it's calcium buildup or sludge, or we've even seen animal bones or tools in the pipeline. It can be anything. And all of this debris will inhibit the amount of product that you can fit through the line. So by cleaning the pipeline, you can make sure that the amount of area that the product can move through is maximized, and you can get as much product through as possible to the end of the pipeline. It can all get out on time, just like if you were trying to get to school. Now, the second reason you want to use a pipeline pig to clean a pipeline is because the pipeline will corrode if you have product that builds up in it over time. So I brought here with me a shovel from outside, and as you can see right here, this used to be bright silver, but it was left out in the rain and the metal actually oxidized, and now it's starting to rust. And that rust is one form of corrosion. So the same thing can happen on the inside of a pipeline, just like you would see rusty pieces of metal on the side of the road. And just like you can clean rust off of a piece of metal, with Pipeline Pig you can limit the amount of corrosion that you would see inside of a pipeline. Okay, so now let's talk about how you clean a pipeline with your Pipeline Pig. So I constructed here my own pipeline made out of binder sheets, and we'll call it the Sambaining pipeline. But the problem with the Sambaining pipeline is that it has been clogged up with some popcorn, which is delicious but will inhibit any product from flowing from one side of my pipeline to the other. Now, the popcorn is pretty jammed in there. It's going to take some amount of force to get it out. And I can take my little pipeline pig, which I've got my little foam earplug from earlier, and stick it in the line and get it to move down. But it's not heavy enough for doing anything to just move the popcorn. So just like in real life, you have to apply some sort of force to get anything done. The way a pig works is that the urethane that we talked about earlier seals along the inside of the pipeline, and then you can apply a pressure to the backside of the pig. And so we know that pressure likes to equalize, so if we apply a high pressure to the back side of the pig, a pressure that's higher than on the other side, it'll make the pig want to move in the direction of the low pressure. So in real life you would use a pump, but in my pipeline world I'm just going to have to use my own air. So I'm going to apply some pressure over here, and I'll dislodge the popcorn, thus allowing me to consume it later. Excellent. Now, as you can see, my pipeline is clear of all popcorn debris thanks to my pipeline pig. Unfortunately, my dog ate all the popcorn, so I wasn't able to enjoy anything, but that's okay. So that was a brief overview of one part of my work, which is pipeline pigs. And in case you're curious, we happen to sell pipeline pigs all over the world. So we have locations in Mexico, Canada, in Belgium and Norway, and really quite a few more places than that even. And we sell pipeline pigs in many countries around the world. And being in the group that I'm in has allowed me to travel around the US and to Mexico and Alaska, and some of my coworkers have traveled much further than that, around Europe and Asia. So it's a huge product that's used all over the world, and one that we hope to make for decades to come.
Hello guys, my name is Federica and I come from Italy. So right now I'm a student at OU-TRSA and I study electrical and computer engineering. I want to tell you a little bit about why I decided to study electrical and computer engineering. So since I was a kid, I was in love with math, science and all these kind of subjects, and I was also pretty good at them. So what happened one day, when I was 15 years old, I went to visit my friend and her dad was an engineer. So I went in their bookshelf, I opened a book and I started reading this book. Inside the book there were symbols, letters, things that I was not able to understand and to recognize. So I asked her, is this Italian? Is this English? I didn't know. So since that day, I decided I wanted to become an engineer. I wanted to be able to understand what was written in that book. So what I did, I enrolled in electrical and computer engineering, but to become an engineer, the path is quite long. So at the beginning, I got my bachelor degree. You go to university, you study for 4 years, and you get your bachelor degree. And I got my degree in Italy. After the bachelor degree, you can decide if you want to stop there or you want to go on. After the bachelor, there is a master degree. It's an additional 2 years of studies. And also I got my master degree back in my country, in Italy. 4 years ago, I came in the US and I decided to go on with the studies. So after the master degree, there is the doctoral degree, and it's an additional 3 or 4 years. During the doctoral degree, you still have to take some courses like informatics and communication, different kind of courses that you can choose. And also you have to do research. So doing research means try to find a solution to a particular problem. For example, we want autonomous cars, so we have to find a solution to realize, to design, and to build these cars. So I want to tell you that this path is not the easiest path. It's very difficult. I mean, there will be like some moments where you want to give up. So I still remember my first exam at my bachelor degree. The first day we were like 200 students in the class. I said to myself, there are too many people, I'm not good enough, I want to give up, I don't want to go to university anymore. We had the first final and we were 200 people. Out of 200 people, just 12 passed the exam, and I was among those 12. So I was very happy and I was very proud of myself. So I decided that I wanted to go on. So for sure, there will be like difficult moments, but we have to believe in ourselves, we have to study, we have to work hard to achieve our goals. So I really want to encourage all of you to study like engineering, and in particular for girls. Right now in my group I'm the only girl, and I would love to have some other girls to talk with and to share my experience and everything. So I encourage all of you to study engineering, because you will have hard time, but the joy, happiness and the reward you feel when you achieve something, it's unbelievable. So guys, please study hard, enroll in engineering and become an engineer to improve the world.